Hello, my name's Steve North and the title of my talk is A Computational Anthrozoology Perspective on Horse-Machine Interaction Explored through the Umamimi Robotic Horse Ears. So this is me. I'm primarily a computer science researcher with a long history of working in human-computer interaction, that's HCI, with a specific focus on animal-computer interaction, ACI, and more recently, computational anthrozoology. I'm a qualified natural horsemanship instructor with animal behaviour, ethology and horse training experience. So what would be a good place to start? I considered starting this talk very conventionally, introducing my research group, etc., and then moving on to the topic. But my work on Umamimi is all about staying in the moment and joining the herd. So I'm going to cut straight to the interesting bit, and then I'll come back to some more of the academic stuff later. Here I am with two of my horse companions. This is Free on the left, who's an American quarter horse, and Duke on the right, who's a Dale's pony. In the photograph, I'm wearing the Umamimi robotic horse ears. In a minute I'll show you a video of this device in action, but for now an image will do. I've spent much of this summer en-eared, as in wearing my ears, my robotic ears, and mixing with my horses. I can't claim to have lived with them, but I joined the herd twice a day, and sometimes I wear Umamimi, sometimes I don't. One of the fields that I work in is animal-computer interaction, or ACI. So what is this? It looks at the relationship between animals and technology, and it does this in three different ways. One, by studying the interaction between animals and technology in naturalistic settings around specific animal activities or interspecies relations. Two, developing user-centered technology that can improve animals' welfare and support animals in their activities. Three, informing user-centered approaches to the design of technology intended for animals, derived from both interaction design and animal science. And those 3 points, the definition, come from Clara Mancini's 2011 paper, Animal-Computer Interaction, ACI Manifesto. I've been working on developing a subfield to anthrozoology called computational anthrozoology. Obviously, other people in anthrozoology have worked using technology and applying it, but there doesn't seem to have been much work done on actually defining how technology is used and when technology is being used as a tool to observe interaction or when it's actually part of the interaction itself. So I've defined computational anthrozoology as one, using computers to study human interspecies relationships. So that's where the computer is itself a lens that you're looking through, using software, using programs, whatever, to study interactions between humans and non-humans. And two, studying human interspecies relationships that are themselves mediated by computers. So that's more like the field of animal-computer interaction, in that it assumes that somewhere in the interaction there will be a human and a non-human, because it's anthrozoology, so that interaction is important. But in some way there is technology, and by that I mean digital era technology. It might be computers or some modern piece of technology is mediating that relationship. I'm going to briefly explain how I see animal-computer interaction, ACI, and computational anthrozoology, where their scopes lie, where they overlap, and where there are slight differences. So to explain the difference between animal-computer interaction and computational anthrozoology, when you're studying interactions of any type, computers or other digital era technology may be used in research, and they're either used as the lens, using the technology to study, interpret, record, contextualize, detect, log, etc., or under the lens, where the research is looking at technology as one of the agents in an interaction. In both ACI and computational anthrozoology, technology is always involved, either as the lens or under the lens. But there are slight differences. Outlined in the red dotted line is computational anthrozoology, the minimum requirement for the type of interaction to be studied. So on both sides of that, on the left as the lens and on the right under the lens, the red dotted line indicates the minimum required participants in your interaction. So For the red dotted line, as the lens, the computer needs to be looking at humans and non-humans as minimum interaction participants. And on the right-hand side, under the lens, there has to be human, a non-human, and technology. So, as the lens, the minimum interaction scope is a human and a non-human. For under the lens, the minimum interaction scope is a human, a non-human, and technology. Outlined in the blue dotted line, this is animal-computer interaction. The minimum requirement for the type of interaction to be studied. So, for as the lens, the minimum interaction scope is just a non-human. There doesn't need to be a human involved, but there could be, but this is the minimum scope. So that's a big difference between the ACI and computational anthrozoology, is the anthrozoology bit specifies that we always have to have a human in the reaction as well as the non-human. For under the lens, the minimum interaction scope for ACI is a non-human technology. So to summarize, ACI focuses on non-humans possibly interacting with humans. Computational anthrozoology focuses on non-humans always interacting with humans. So what are the origins of the name? Umamimi means horse ears or horse-eared, and I've used this name to reflect the Japanese tradition called Umamimi, which means animal-eared. This is found in both anime and manga. It describes characters that possess animal-like features. The characters will be predominantly human, and any real animal characteristics are minimal. Generally, Umamimi characters have ears and a tail which are animal-like. Often this is just part of their attire and can easily be removed at will. So here's a bit of an introductory video to Umamimi. Okay, so that was a short video just previewing Umamimi and showing you in a fun way some of the elements of it. So what's my inspiration for Umamimi? Here are some ear examples. For example, on the far left, we've got the cable-controlled animatronic ears for the horse puppets in Michael Morpurgo's War Horse, the stage show. Interestingly, not using a lot of animatronic electronics, it's belt driven, connected to bicycle cables and brake levers, which are operated by the puppeteer. To the bottom to next along on the pink background, we've got NeuroWare's Nekomimi, which is allegedly a brain-controlled cat ears set. Nekomimi means cat ears in the same way that Umamimi means horse ears. So allegedly this had an EEG device built into it. So it wasn't about movement as Umamimi is. It was supposed to be responding to emotion. And these were quite popular devices. They sold quite a lot of them, but no one was actually sure whether they were really doing what they claimed to. So moving along, we've now got two other companion robots also with expressive ears, showing how ears are considered to be an important part of even fairly basic robotic companions. The one with the blue ears is the Miro biomimetic robot, and the one to the right of that, the predominantly white with the red flashes on its belly, is the Nabaztag robot. So these are all things I looked at when I was thinking about Umamimi. Oh, I've missed out the kitty animatronic ears at the top there, which were, I think, responsive to movement. I'm not sure whether they used an accelerometer, but they were a similar idea. So thinking a bit more about how my work relates to human and other animal assemblages. That's situations where non-humans and humans come together in some kind of unified form. Obviously this crosses over somewhat between kind of areas like cultural and literary studies and also into performance art. So we've got here a couple of examples of performance artists. There's Marion Laval-Jontet, who is left and far right. And the particular one on the far left is May the Horse Live in Me, which she apparently actually injected herself with horse blood and wore these horse hooves. And in the centre we have Lisa Bufano, who made herself into an animal, but strangely was also an assemblage with furniture legs as well. Carrying on from that theme, we have Thomas Thwaites, also known as the Goat Man, who took a holiday from being human and using his prosthetics and robotic attachments made himself into a goat, and for a period of time lived on a hillside with a herd of goats and wrote a book about it, which you can see at the bottom there. So horses and their use in communication and why they're important to the horse. This is something, if you are familiar with horses, you'll understand, but let's talk about it anyway. There's literature in the field of equitation science suggesting that horses follow the directional ear movements of other horses as attention cues, and that they also respond to human gaze cues in the same manner. The equine ear is a complex anatomical component. As a veterinary horse owner's textbook states, quote, each ear can be swiveled independently through 180 degrees or laid back, shutting it off. Such mobility is achieved with 16 auricular muscles attached to the base of the pinna. Humans have only 3 such muscles, all of which are vestigial. Easily visible at the top of the head, a horse's ears are used to signal emotional state and intent. In response to directional sounds, a horse will then flick an ear towards the source, or if the sound is coming from the front, pricks both ears forward. This is actually one of my toy robotic horses, but I like the exaggerated ear, so I quite often use it to demonstrate this about ear positions and how horses from different viewpoints still appear to have these two vaguely cylindrical parallel objects sticking out the top of their heads, however you view them. So making Umamimi, there are 2 pictures here. On the left is the interior uncovered version, and you can see it's all very kind of maker culture, and it's not developed in a high-tech lab. I've got some background in electronics and building and things, but this is more about building a prototype and getting it to work. On the right you can see it's been covered here in black fake faux fur. So the Umamimi hardware is built on a metal framework with the, as I said, with the faux fur covering. 2 micro servo motors each move an ear independently in incremental steps to a maximum range of 180 degrees. At the heart of the device is an all-in-one electronics project board. This board is powered by a programmable processor. The software for Umamimi was developed using the Arduino programming language, which is a set of C and C++ functions for anyone who's interested in coding. Umamimi responds to detected changes in an accelerometer similar to the one in the smartphone you might well have in your pocket right now, when the user, the human user, moves their head. The default position for the Umamimi ears is neutral. Beyond this, in response to changes in the user's head orientation, Umamimi has 4 predefined movements: fully forward, fully back, one ear turned left and one ear turned right. What happens when there's no input from the wearer, I hear you possibly asking? This might be considered the device's default behavior. When idling and awaiting instructions, configurable code profiles have been developed, allowing the device to perform random micro moves. These can be used to model the characteristics of different horses or horse emotional states. Describing this in any details a bit beyond the scope of this presentation, but I have actually written a publication describing how this works. But in short, it means that I can actually observe a specific real horse, and I can then, through using an ethogram and a process of recording their ear movements and characteristics, I can feed that in as several parameters to Umamimi, and its random movements, the ones that aren't controlled by the user, will start to mirror the laconic slow movement or the flicky fast constant movements, or how much the ears are together, etc.
So at the moment I'm just running with an ear profile which when making random micro moves doesn't move that much. I'm just going to show you how the user triggered moves work. So if I tip my head slightly to the right, the ear should track right and stay there until I bring my head back up again. So that's the accelerometer is reading my head position. I have to some extent get a feel for where the level position is. So that's the left position, should be. Then there's the more dramatic full ears back, which is a bit like the kind of horse pinning in anger or fear. And then there's a slight forward tip to the head, which brings the ears forward into a kind of full attention position. So I'll see again, right ear, left ear, right ear, left ear, ears back, tension place. Okay.
So, what further work is there to do on this? I've submitted a paper for publication which describes the technical aspects and the configurable profiles. That's the aspect that's about being able to model other live horses. That includes a workflow for observing the real horses and modeling their characteristics using the device. So this is all very quantitatively based, this aspect of it. This is all about ethology techniques, observation, perhaps using multiple observers, checking inter-rater and intra-rater reliability, and it's all done properly in that kind of quantitative way. So you can see how I'm crossing over quite a lot in my methodologies between quant, qual and hybrid in between, and descriptive as well. I've also submitted a paper for publication which uses autoethnography and speculative fiction to tell the story of an imaginary study which is about quantitative research, but it is itself qualitative. That's about evaluating how horses respond to seeing attentional cues from Umamimi. There is a lot of research already in existence in equitation science looking at how horses respond to images shown of other horses paying attention to a particular bucket of food or a particular item, and whether they actually respond to the image as they would a real horse. And I'm proposing in this imaginary study that I would do the same thing but with a short video clip of Umamimi turning its ear to indicate interest in something. Then I'm also working on another autoethnography which is of a summer lived in-eared, which is much more like the kind of descriptive storytelling short excerpt that I read from my field notes. It's about my impressions and my self-reflection on trying to be part of the herd and using the robotic ears as a way to improve communication, or to see if that's even possible. Obviously, this is a crude way to do it. No one is seriously suggesting that this is going to become a interspecies communicator, but it's all about trying to understand what is important to horses, what form of communication. The ears are particularly important, and so I've focused my work for now on the ears and the technology involved in it. And I'm going to bring it to a close there. So I'd like to thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope the rest of the conference goes really well. I'm sorry I can't be there to see it. It sounds like there's some fascinating topics. Thank you.